So, people, I'm a watcher. I'm an avid watcher of the Porterweight podcast. That is former two-time welterweight champion Sean Porter's podcast, where he got him and his boys on there talking about boxing and boxing matchups. They interview a whole lot of boxers, a lot of different champions, so on and so forth. And so recently, Terence Bud Crawford, welterweight champion Terence Bud Crawford, was on the Porterweight podcast. And Sean Porter asked Terence Crawford, he said, is this a fight that you've got to have? He was talking about the Errol Spence Jr. fight, and he asked Terence, is this a fight that you've got to have? And Terence Crawford responded, and I quote, nah, not really. I wouldn't say that I gotta have it, because realistically, I'm going to the Hall of Fame with or without him. I feel like this fight is a fight more so for all my fans. I repeat, Sean Porter asked Terence Crawford, is this a fight that you've got to have? Is the fight with Errol Spence Jr. a fight that you've got to have? And Terence Crawford was quoted as saying, nah, not really. I wouldn't say that I got to have it, because realistically, I'm going to the Hall of Fame with or without him. I feel like this is a fight more so for my fans. Now listen, I'm telling y'all right now, when Bud made that statement, he was being 100% disingenuous. I don't give a damn what nobody say. Terence Crawford don't believe that he don't need that fight. He himself does not believe that he don't need that fight. He knows he needs that fight with Errol Spence Jr. He knows he needs to fight Errol Spence because he left Top Rank and Bob Arum because Bob couldn't deliver that fight to him. That was one of the reasons why he left. That's one of the reasons why he is cited for leaving, because Bob couldn't get him that fight. So what you mean? Now you don't need that fight. It's not a fight that you really need. What? Bro, you know you need that fight, and you know that. You know better than to even say you don't. Every athlete in every sport, specifically in a combat sport, needs a great nemesis on their level to bring out the best in them. Errol Spence Jr. is that rival to Terence Crawford. They both need each other. Errol Spence needs to fight Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford needs to fight Errol Spence Jr. in order to solidify their legacies at the welterweight level. And anybody who thinks otherwise is just dumb. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't watch boxing correctly. So for Bud to say that, I'm like, bro, what are you talking about, Bud? If Bud don't fight Errol, his run to Hall of Fame will not be remembered. I promise y'all, Bud's run to the Hall of Fame will not be remembered if he doesn't fight Errol Spence Jr. Because let's face it, up until this point, Terence will be a Hall of Fame fighter based upon him being undisputed at 140 and for him having belts at 135 and 147. But the being undisputed at 140 is the solidified factor in him being Hall of Fame. Him being undisputed at 140. But I'm going to tell you right now, most people don't even remember Bud's runs at 135 and 140 unless you're just a fan of the sport like I am. Right? In fact, they talking about, him being undisputed at 140. Most people don't even remember who Bud beat to be undisputed at 140. Now, I do. I know it because I'm a boxing fan. But most people don't even know. They can't even tell you who Bud beat at 140 to be undisputed. Right? They don't even remember who he beat in them weight classes. So you need that Errol Spence Jr. fight to solidify your legacy and to show the world that you really are the top dog in the sport. Y'all both need each other. So for him to say that, it's like, bro, what are you talking about? Now you just saying anything. Seriously. Right? And let's be honest too. When he was undisputed at 140, everybody know that 140 was one of the weaker divisions in boxing at the time. Everybody know that. 140 wasn't really hitting on nothing when Bud was running through that circuit. It wasn't. So, I mean, that's how you know that his Hall of Fame run will not be remembered unless he fights Errol Spence Jr. When I see Bud say he don't need Errol Spence Jr., this is not the first time that Bud has said this. Bud said it on Joe Rogan podcast. He said Errol Spence need him. He don't need to fight Errol. He don't need to fight Errol. He Hall of Fame already. He already has built the Hall of Fame career. And yeah, that may be true. But why the hell would you be saying that? You should be saying you want that fight. No, you should say you need that fight, because really, I promise you, you're not going to be remembered in the way that you really want to be remembered unless you fight that brother. Both of y'all are not going to be remembered the way y'all are wanting to be remembered in the sport if y'all don't fight each other. Y'all have to have that collision course. But again, when I hear him say stuff like he don't need Errol, I think about when he was in the water. He had some beach somewhere, somebody at water telling Errol Spence, where your whole ass at? Where your whole ass at? Where the big fish at? I'm looking for the big fish. Where your whole ass at? All of that? Where's that energy at, brother? Where's that energy at, brother? Because when he was doing all of that and Errol was being quiet and he wasn't saying nothing, Terence was beating his chest, talking gorilla, talking gangster. Like he was the biggest gangster to ever come out of Omaha, Nebraska. Like he was the biggest gangster to ever come through the mean streets of Nebraska ever in your life. Like he was a Nebraska, straight up Nebraska killer when he was talking. Right? He was the biggest killer in Nebraska when he was doing all of that. But now you saying you don't need to fight? Brother, what is that about? Right? What is that about? You know, when he said he didn't need Errol because he's already a Hall of Fame fighter, he don't need to fight Errol, it sounded like what Floyd Mayweather used to say when they asked him about Manny Pacquiao. One fighter don't make my legacy. All these other champions that I've beaten through all these different weight classes, I've been a champion at. I'm undefeated. I've beaten this guy, that guy who was undefeated at this time and that time. And I beat this guy who was coming off a great win. I don't need Manny Pacquiao. That is what Floyd Mayweather used to say. Right? So he took a page out of the great Floyd Mayweather's book, who was a great champion. But even Floyd knew he had to make that fight against Manny Pacquiao. Floyd used to talk all that type of stuff, but at the end of the day, he made that fight happen. Now, whether it happened too late or whatever, that's up to y'all interpretation. But like I said before, Floyd Mayweather was even older than Manny Pacquiao when he beat him. So what the hell does that tell you about Floyd, right? How great Floyd was. He neutralized and nullified everything Manny Pacquiao was trying to do in that fight. But nonetheless, Floyd knew if he did not take that fight, there was going to be an asterisk next to his name. He was not going to be looked at the way he wanted to be looked at unless he fought Manny Pacquiao. He knows that. If he would have ended his career without fighting Manny Pacquiao at least one time, people were always going to look at him and like, yeah, but he never beat Manny. He never even tried to beat Manny Pacquiao. People look at Riddick Bowe the same way when Riddick Bowe refused to fight Lennox Lewis. People looked at Riddick Bowe the same way, throwing the belts in the trash, all that. People were looking at him like, bro, what? As great as Riddick Bowe was, people still look at it like, nah, bro, you supposed to fight Riddick Bowe. As great as Riddick Bowe was, as great as Big Daddy Riddick Bowe was, people looking at him like, nah, bro, you supposed to fight Lennox. All that, fuck all that. You supposed to fight Lennox. I ain't trying to hear none of that. You supposed to be a goon. You supposed to be the heavyweight champion of the world. Stick your chest out, beat your chest, be a lion, and get in there and fight another lion and go head up and see who come out of the cave. See who come out of that cave victorious. So all of that, man, like, nah, bro. Terence, you and Errol both need each other to be historically great fighters, especially to be remembered as a great, all-time great welterweight. Y'all need to make that happen. Y'all need to get into it. Y'all need to bump heads and get into that ring and get it cracking. All that, I don't need him. Yes, you do, brother. Because you will not be remembered the way you think you're going to be remembered. You can be Hall of Fame all you want to. There's a lot of Hall of Fame boxers who aren't remembered the way that other Hall of Famers are remembered. I'll say that. There's a lot of Hall of Fame fighters who aren't remembered like that. Who aren't remembered the same way other guys are, who aren't revered in the same fashion that other guys are. Right? You know, so, nah, bro, it's going to be an asterisk next to your name if you don't make that fight happen, man. Furthermore, since Bud fanatics try to say that Errol Spence doesn't give off this energy, he don't give off the same energy when it comes to fighting Terence Crawford all the time. When he doesn't give off an energy like he wants to fight Errol doesn't give off because Bud fanatics always say Errol don't give off an energy the energy that he wants to fight Bud. He always gives off an energy that he really is shying away from the fight. He always gives off an energy that he's nonchalant about the fight. Well, what the hell is this, y'all? What the hell is Bud doing right here? He doing that stuff that y'all say that Errol do. And Bud said this before. This ain't the first time he said this. He said it on Joe Rogan's podcast years ago. And I'm looking at that scratching my head like, bro, what the hell is that about, Bud? Because listen, y'all, can you imagine Holyfield saying that about Mike Tyson? I'm already Hall of Fame. Shoot. I mean, I'm a champion I was undisputed at cruiserweight. I became a champion at heavyweight. I don't need to fight Mike Tyson. I don't need him to secure my legacy. I don't need that. I don't need him. I'm already Hall of Fame. Just imagine if Holyfield would have had that attitude. People would have ripped him to shreds, ridiculed him to pieces. They would have clowned him every day, left and right, if he wouldn't have fought Mike Tyson. especially with how enamored people were with Mike Tyson and how beloved he was. If Evander didn't go up in there and fight Mike Tyson, they would have never really viewed him as the real heavyweight champion of the world. And he even spoke on that in a documentary. He knew people would have never given him his just due and his credit if he wouldn't have fought Mike Tyson, right? Same can be said about, imagine Muhammad Ali saying I ain't fighting Joe Frazier. I'm already Hall of Fame. I'm already a great fighter. I'm already Hall of Fame. I don't need Joe Frazier. Just imagine him having that attitude. Imagine if Marvin Hagler said he didn't need to fight Tommy Hearns. People would have been clowning Marvin Hagler. The boxing world would be up in arms and they would have been calling all those men I named frauds. They would have labeled them as frauds if they would have had that same energy. And Bud Crawford fanatics would be on Errol's head saying that Errol was a hoe, he's a punk, he's scary, he ain't this, he ain't cut out to be no real world champion. If Errol Spence would have uttered those words, if he would have uttered those same words that Terence Crawford said, they would have called Errol a fraud. I mean, he ain't nothing, he ain't no real champion. He ain't cut out like the old school fighters of yesteryear. He ain't like the old school fighters that they watched growing up. I'm gonna tell you right now, Bud saying that ain't old school fighter. That ain't something that an old school fighter would be saying. That ain't showing that you cut from the same cloth as the old school fighters. So yeah, Terence Crawford definitely, his ass need Errol Spence Jr. the same way Errol Spence Jr. need him. Cause besides Sean Porter, Bud ain't beating no elite welterweight. He ain't beating no high-level welterweight outside of Sean Porter. And the Sean Porter win was very impressive. And Bud is extremely skilled. He's a phenomenal talent, a special fighter. For real, switch-hitting fighter, special all the way across the board. But the only one he fought and beat that was elite and that was looked at as a top-tier heavyweight was Sean Porter. And again, he stopped Sean, so he get a lot of kudos for that. But mean green fighting machine. Come on, fam. Amir Khan, glass jaw Amir Khan, and he quit. Kell Brook, who was already whooped on damaged goods. And I gave him credit for the Kell Brook fight because Kell looked in phenomenal shape. But Kell, Jose Benavidez, brother, who Danny just dismantled. Danny Garcia was whooping on Jose Benavidez's ass, and Terence had some trouble with him. A nice amount of trouble with Jose Benavidez Jr., right? He beat, what's the other boy name? What's the boy that beat Manny Pacquiao name? Jeff Horn, brother. Nobody ever looked at Jeff Horn as an elite fighter. And majority of people can tell you they don't think Jeff Horn really beat Manny Pacquiao in the first place to get that belt. So him beating Jeff Horn, that was a foregone conclusion. So it's like, nah, bro, them wins, the best win he got is Sean Porter, who is the only top-level welterweight he's fought. So, yeah, your welterweight run is not going to be remembered unless you fight Errol Spence Jr. Without question, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, yes, you need to be saying that you need Errol Spence Jr. Cut out all the shenanigans. Cut out all the tomfoolery. Cut out all the histrionics, brother. You need him. You need to fight him the same way Errol Spence needs you. Y'all both need each other. So I'm saying, where is that energy at when you were saying, Errol, where your whole ass at and all this whole ass stuff and all this goon talk, where that's at? You need to have that same energy when it comes to getting this fight done, man. Machiavelli Mills TV, I'm out. Peace.